And welcome back.
Hello. So, yeah, we have some questions in the notes to get started. Um, so essentially the modular coding session is a demonstration and well, essentially a pair coding demonstration, and it's also a way of wrapping up and tying everything together. So it should essentially it should touch on most things that we have talked about during this entire workshop. So we have a few different questions in the notes. It would be great if you could answer at least the first three, and then yeah, we'll get going once we have a few answers to talk through.
Well, we can already start with essentially our answers to the questions.
Yeah, why not?
Um, I'll start with the what does modular code development mean for you? So for me, it's if you try to structure your code such that oops, sorry, structure your code that you actually have different parts that are responsible for different things and make clear distinctions as to okay, this is a logical pack that belongs together, and therefore it's executed in one function. This is a logical group of things, so this is one package, and so on. That's
Yeah.
what modular
So
code development is about for me.
yeah, so we started with version control, and we went essentially like we went all the way to sharing it and putting things online and collaborating with sharing code, changing someone else's code and so on. And to me, the best or the most clear definition is when you can actually take a piece of code, maybe a feature you have created, a function you have written, and um, actually contribute it back to the original uh, software. So the original code, or even better, take it and contribute it to some other code base in a way that makes sense. So then that if you can do that, then the code base you're contributing to is modular in the sense that you can put a module in and it works. And also your starting point is modular because there is some module that you can pick up and put somewhere else. So it becomes usable in many different situations. And this, of course, it happens on different levels. It could be a function, but it could also be an entire, a Python module which means a file, or a library in C or C++, and so on.
And this is also what you have started writing there, essentially. So the general idea seems to be pretty similar.
Yeah. This also has something to do with unit testing in that a unit that you can test is a module. If it doesn't
Or a
have too
function.
many side effects. Yeah, a function you can test is a module that you can also then plug out
Yeah.
in some way. Okay, best practices to arrive at a well-structured modular code in your favorite programming language. I don't actually know what my favorite language is. Um,
To me, it's designing well, as in if I want to have a certain functionality, what parts of this functionality are actually reusable? What parts of this functionality are specific to exactly what this is going to do? And then separate things that I think are more generally usable and things that are well more specific to this one task. Um, Also potentially, um, depending again on the project, if it's large enough, thinking about how could someone else provide an alternative approach to some parts of my code. And at which point I automatically have to think, okay, I might need to have an interface or something. And this implementation of this interface, that's one piece. So I can define the interface and then put in an implementation. Someone else could define a different implementation for the same thing. That automatically creates modular code because
Yeah,
things can
so
be replaced easily.
essentially you surround the module with an interface. So
Yeah.
if you have a defined interface, what is inside can change. And so it is plug and play. So one very practical thing that I, at least when I was like writing mostly C code in research, I saw people use global values, global references. So you define some something, you define a thing that needs to be accessible essentially everywhere in the code, and you make it globally accessible, which means it's not explicitly there in the arguments of a function, for example. So like in simulation programs, you often do this for like the world, the 3D world that you are simulating. So that kind of thing means you cannot take the function and put it in a different code, right? Um, Whereas if it's explicit, if you put the parameter directly into the function definition, then you can put it in anywhere as long as they know to provide that parameter correctly. So explicit is better than implicit in that sense. That's and yeah, so basically, yeah, writing small functions with a specific task and then making their interactions explicit. Like, have everything that goes into the function be visible in the function definition, and everything that it does should also be visible either by looking at the return value or looking at the comments.
What I also, that's partly in the answers here as well. Um, Try not to create a large script that you're running, because as soon as as soon as there is really computational functionality in the run script that you have that could be handled in a function, it becomes potentially, as it's mentioned here, difficult later on to refactor this into a function or to refactor your code such that this calls a function. And if the sooner you say, okay, well, this is not about the individual actions of my script anymore. This is about um, handling what I'm doing. This can normally go into a function. So if I have something like a script that I'm running, this is commonly create my target object or whatever, and then run individual functions on that thing. But I'm not having any, I would say, functional code in there in the main script. All this is just essentially I can read through my main script and know that first it's reading the data, second it's pre-processing, third is this, fourth is this, and just by reading through, um, I essentially have one line per all of these tasks because it's the function call that does it.
Yeah.
That helps me.
And essentially the same is also true for functions. If the function starts to be longer than you can actually read and understand, then it's probably too long. Um, it can be split into smaller pieces that do simpler individual things,
It's kind of
and then can be
optimal.
reused at different places.
Yeah, it's kind of optimally your code by just reading through it explains what it's doing until you come to so small pieces that they are relatively obvious what they are doing.
And well, since I said something about what the code should be like, so the reason is to make it understandable, to make it easier. So it's not just about style and like, well, it's not just about like telling people what good code is in some way. Like this is all practical advice, right? So it makes it easier to understand and change and reuse, which is the point.
Yeah. So
So what do we have in C? We have, or did we actually go through the answers in B?
mostly this is, yeah, minimum things. Put them in
Yeah,
functions.
smallest parts that could be reused.
This
And
is not directly modular code, but in general, having simple and useful comments
mm,
is
yeah,
very, very useful
documentation is
in
useful.
general development, regardless of
Yeah,
modular or not.
yeah. So I guess yeah, maybe I already said this essentially. The one big thing that kind of defines what modular means here is, or in general, what modular actually means is um, it the code or each part of the code should avoid interacting with other parts of the code as much as possible. So essentially,
Uh,
like yeah,
I would
well,
say as much as sensible.
yeah, as much.
There are
Okay, no, not as much
interactions,
as possible. Yeah, I mean, you can
and
always reduce interactions to zero if you just um, if you don't care
it's
about whether it works. Yeah,
so.
as much as makes sense, of course. Yeah.
What you very often see in things like style suggestions and so on is also having not too many input arguments for functions, which means that there needs to be a certain balance between what responsibilities certain functions have and what where they get their data from. So if your function, because you want to output it into a function, starts to have 20 input arguments, it's likely that
Mhm.
it's doing either it's doing more than it should be doing, or it might be better to have a different logical unit than a function for this. This might be
Oh,
something that a class should be doing,
yeah.
that you initialize with a couple of values and then provide additional data into individual functions.
Yes, I've been talking a lot about functions, and you can also like the data types and data can also be modular. So you can combine different values that are in some way related. Um, so if you have data about a mesh that you're running a simulation on, that mesh can contain multiple different things. It can contain objects, density, color, all sorts of things. Um, and in many cases, you would want all of those things to be stored in the same under the same name. So you could create a structure, a data structure, or a class, or something like that, to put multiple different things in, and then you can pass that as a single argument. That it also makes it easier to read. So this is now a single unit of some kind of custom data.
This is the mesh that contains all the information about
Yeah,
the mesh, about all
yeah.
points in the
So
mesh.
something like the world. Just
Yep.
call this a world, and
Yeah,
or an
and it
environment.
has
Yeah,
cities, forests, and whatever, and you
yeah,
can get those by either functions or
yeah,
other properties.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
What do you know about programming that you wish somebody told you earlier, Jano?
Uh, I mean, I should have started using version control from the beginning. It would have saved a lot of time when like, I broke something and um, essentially had to slowly, step by step, undo the work until it works again. Um, so yeah, that's also one of the answers essentially. Creating a copy before you start making changes. Like version control does that for you. It's a very good idea to do. Um,
I I would agree with the use an IDE editor with color coding. Uh,
yeah.
it depends a lot on the languages that you're using. But in general, at least to me, things like uh, going to definitions of certain imports or something, or going to definitions of functions via an IDE is extremely helpful because this is originally more from typed languages and precompiled languages, but nowadays it essentially also works with Python and, for example, VS Code, that you can just right-click on a function call, go to definition, and you get the function that is being called at this point, and you can look into the function, what does it actually do? And it helps in understanding what is happening here. And um, yeah, it just makes it so much more graspable what your code is doing, even if it's not that well, or what someone else's code might be doing if it's not that well documented.
Yeah. And I think actually modularity and unit testing are things that would have been very useful to know something about earlier. Like I remember at some point I hit upon the practice of write a test that checks some or as much of the functionality as possible. It was essentially running the code, running an entire instance of the code and checking that the values match some expectations. But these were all end-to-end tests. I didn't have any unit tests. So it would basically only tell me that something's broken now. Um, yeah,
And you
so
don't
it
know
would have been
which
very
one. Yeah.
useful. Yeah. Um, yeah, so I think it's time to go to the demonstration. What do you think?
Yep.
We go through
So
anything more
let's go to
analysis?
our task.
Yeah. Um, okay, so we have some weather data. And what are we going to do with this data?
What we want to do is essentially we want to plot the data over time and make this a bit more modular. Because at the moment we have this kind of script that just
Yeah.
plots something.
Yeah, so I guess the starting point for me with this would be I would have this piece of code in a Jupyter notebook that I wrote to do a specific task to yeah, to plot the stuff. So here we are.
Which we essentially have here.
Yeah,
We can define the number of measurements here, but anytime we want to change the number of measurements, we have to modify this and then hope that we are not forgetting to run something. So yeah, at the moment, this is what we get. We can update that, but once we do that, we essentially need to run all the individual pieces again, and we hope to not forget, for example, to reread the temperatures, because otherwise we get a complete mess in later stages.
okay. So let me add to the bottom of the notes. I will call it the modular code task, and I'll also copy in the correct section of the materials. Okay. Now, the task is then to make this code better in some way. What can we do to make it better? So yeah, please go if you have ideas, write into the notes. What do you think we could do here? So
Mm.
one thing I think, just looking at the plot, I'm not really sure what is happening there. I mean, you clearly have a plot of temperatures, but maybe it would be useful, especially if you want to like take the plot and put it in a paper to have some axis labels.
Yep.
So how would we do that?
So
So the labels, do they need to be defined before you start creating the plot? I think they
I
do.
think so.
So that's plt.x label and plt.y label. Yeah, that it makes sense to put it where you define the number of measurements.
This is,
It's x label is a function. It's x label and then it takes us yeah. Okay, so x is days. Okay,
I think so.
that makes sense. Yeah, why not?
Uh,
It's temp in Celsius. Yeah,
I don't find the degree sign here on that keyboard at the moment. Um,
that's not the problem.
okay.
Okay, so now I guess you do need to rerun the whole thing. Okay, that just running that cell did weird things. I guess it has the plot in memory already and it's outputting the plot. Why is that happening?
Mm, because probably this,
The Y label function, I guess, returns the plot. So it gets displayed. Yeah, okay, that works.
let's
Um,
do some, nope, that actually didn't
no.
change anything.
Did you try rerunning from the beginning? Just the restart and run everything?
I
Because I think
mean,
so. It's the two triangles, the double run button. Looks like a fast forward button. Yeah, I've
let's see.
actually never seen that. That's weird. Okay. Well,
So
we
this
don't
obviously
have.
doesn't work.
No, I guess we can put it where
The
we define
plots
the same
happen.
cell as the plot.
Might be that this is because it's in cells. I think the
Yeah.
original.
Well, okay, that works better. That was weird. I've never seen that before.
That might have been because it's in, well, cells now.
Yeah, but I think well, anyway, I guess let's not let's not go too far
But
into that now.
it might anyways be an idea to get this and move it to an actual function, and then reduce what we have here in the plotting to something that um, only calls those functions.
Yeah. Let me first suggest a complication, and I guess this is a step towards making it a function. But the complication is to instead of just making one plot, make three different plots with different values um, of the number of measurements. So
Okay,
that
so
means actually now you need to combine basically all of these
yeah,
cells into a single cell. Because the follow inside the follow, if you change the number of measurements, what does that affect? It affects the part where you read the data because that already sets the number of rows read. And then, well, I guess it doesn't. Well, maybe then you are using that the read data to set the yeah the temperature values or get the temperature values, so that changes. And then the mean, of course, changes, and yeah, everything changes. Okay, and then if you indent everything, yeah. Okay, so now we have a few different plots being created.
start this. So one issue that we had in the original is not there because we have the days everywhere because we have them not.
Oh yeah, we are setting it inside the for
So
loop.
if we would redo it like this,
Now you're gonna get an extra plot, and none of the other plots are going to have
that's
them.
true. Well, we can. To,
Yeah, but
this is a
I
bit
mean, yeah,
stupid.
it looks like the plot function is independent of the label setting functions, but it's actually not. The plot function, when you say plot.show, no, actually, no, that's not what's happening here. What is happening here is that we call plot.clear CLF,
Yep.
clear. What is the F?
Clear figure, I
Clear
think.
figure. Okay, thanks. Uh, so so we are actually removing the labels.
Oh, and we, of course, forgot something.
Well, yeah, I was going to come to that. Yeah. So you probably want to make it an F string. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
and
now we are changing the file name based on the number of measurements. Okay. That didn't actually work.
we it did.
Oh, okay.
It
It
just
just
took
took
a
a
bit
while.
to
Yeah.
update the.
Okay, fine. So yeah, now we actually have the images that we can include in our paper
Report.
about the temperatures in the Helsinki airport.
If it loads.
Or
Well,
well, I'm hoping that the PNG file is actually correct. Can you check the one with 25? Well, PNG should be. It shouldn't depend on the number of. I mean, it's a pixel map. Okay, well, how seriously do we want to take the plots being incorrect? Rather the files
I
not
don't think
showing
it's
up
an
correctly.
issue at the moment.
Yeah, let's go on. We are going to move this into the terminal at some point anyway. Okay. Well, I mean,
But
now we do have this for loop, and we could. This also kind of nicely defines one possible way of splitting it into functions. I guess that's not really splitting if you take the whole thing and make it a single function.
okay, let's.
It's going to be a Python file. Or, okay, you're
Yeah.
moving the whole thing into a script. That makes sense.
Okay, this is not really
So yeah, and
more modular yet, but
yeah. But for people listening, please do make suggestions. Like we are going to actually follow the suggestions that people make in the notes. Um,
let's
okay,
see.
so now we have, I guess you have to activate the environment. So now we
I'll
have a
actually
Python
check
function. Okay, let's check. Okay.
what happens. Yep, that works.
Okay. And it's creating the
It's
file. So it
creating the
probably, oh,
images
it's
and I need
displaying
to,
the images. Okay, that's fun.
yeah, and I need to close them.
Yeah. Sometimes that's what you want, sometimes not. Okay.
But yeah, somehow the files are broken, actually. They are white.
Okay. Well, let's take a look at the code then. So it did display them correctly, but the
Yes,
figures
but
being
the
saved are not correct.
which is a bit strange.
That's interesting. Well, what should we do? Well, there's definitely one thing that's sort of functionally separate from everything else, which is the plot results part, right?
Yeah.
So that is it's doing two things actually. It's showing the plot. Well, okay, three things. It's constructing the plot, showing the plot, and saving it into an image, which for
Hmm.
some reason is not working. Um,
But let's
but
make a
yeah, we
function out
can.
of this.
Yeah. So do we want to continue showing the plot since we are running from the terminal? We
I don't think so. But what we could do What we could do is we could return the plot.
Yeah, yeah. Why? Well, I mean, I was going to say why not, but um,
And
we are
then
clearing it between each iteration
do we? No.
because do we actually need to do
Mm,
that?
I guess we
I think
do.
maybe
The question, I think we do need to clear it. But what might work is to essentially indicate during the plot data that we want to get a plot, that we want to get some access or something. Or maybe that's too
um.
much.
Okay, well, let's just go on and take the whole plotting section, move it into a function.
Function for now.
Yeah, and that can be fine-tuned later, but it's the straightforward thing to do is to make a new function. So now it's taking temperature, number of measurements. So number of measurements affects the file name. So it is actually
Does it only affect?
doing
Yeah,
it.
it only affects the file name. Then we might rename that because
Oh, it could be file name. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And then we construct the file name there. Okay,
hmm,
so this seems to make sense, although, well, I guess the fact that the function is defined below, does it matter?
I think it does.
Um, yeah, there's a difference in how it works inside classes and
Yep.
in a normal script.
In classes, you can reorder
Yeah,
about a script test to have
yeah,
everything defined before it's being called.
yeah. Okay, so
So, huh,
here's a
there
question.
we are.
Why do we calculate? Oh, did it actually create the? Oh, right, okay. So, one question. Why do we calculate the mean? Oh, because it is actually used in the plot, right? Yes.
The
In fact, somebody said that
oh
in the
yeah,
notes, and I I just didn't understand. Okay, so yes, that you should also include mean as a parameter. If yeah, if you want to have it in the plot. Okay.
and I'm the reason I'm ordering it temperatures mean because personally to me temperatures and mean are what this function actually needs. And for file name, if I just want to use this once, I could actually give a default value.
Yeah, yeah, it could be an
So
option.
that's why
And
I
they are kind of ordered in a way by by similar things. Okay.
so this
So
is what
yeah.
we now get, which looks yeah okay.
Okay, so now
The
it
f
shows them again, and again, it looks like the files are not working
Nope,
correctly.
they are not.
Hmm. Okay, well, we can come back to that at some point. It's a bit weird that we're starting from a code that doesn't work and trying to make it better by fixing it. Um, yeah, I just don't really know what it could be. But if we remove the show, does that help?
Let's see. Yes, that helps.
Okay, why is that?
That's a very good
Ah,
question.
well, fine. Now we have some plots. That's good.
It
So
might it
let's,
be that show actually clears the plot?
yeah, could be.
Let's test something.
Okay.
What happens if we do this? Need to save it. So I'm getting the plots and I'm getting the images. So seemingly show
Yeah,
clears out the
okay.
plot.
But well, I mean, that's on one hand interesting,
That's
but
good to know, but
also
not helping
a
that
very
much.
much like a Matplotlib specific thing, a Python specific thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, um, I'm okay. Yeah, we do have okay. So yeah, for loops, functions, and so on. Like you can get this far in, or you can do exactly the same things in any language.
Yeah.
Um, I
So
mean, yeah, setting the labels will of course be a different function depending on the library and all of that.
I think what we
But
can
still,
also move into a function is reading the data.
yes. So reading the data, and this is a suggestion directly from the notes. So another function for reading the data. And it could be, so read data is very general and it makes sense. Could also be read temperatures or something like that. Well, let's call it read data for now. So the read data reads the temperatures from the CSV file, and it then also picks the column. So it specifically is the data that we want in this case. Okay, should we also
I
have a?
could, well, we could make this a bit more general.
Well, yeah. Let's do that since I already mentioned it at this point, might as well do it. So you can give it a file name
So
argument.
I would leave it at file name, and
Yeah.
so we are assuming that we have a certain format of the data, and that this format has a column air temperature degrees Celsius. That's the normal. That's the assumption that we are putting in. We don't necessarily know what file name this is being saved in.
No, we don't
Hmm?
know the output file name. Yeah, the read data needs the input file.
Yeah.
There is one good point in the notes. There's many good points in the notes. There's one new good point in the notes, which is that we could read the data just once instead of reading it many times, and then taking
First,
the
yes,
first n rows.
that's also an option. Then we remove this
Yes.
completely. Would need to then put this
Temperatures
as
there.
temperature data is read data this.
Okay.
And then
Yes.
we
And then,
have
yeah, then we can call it temperatures instead.
temperatures. Well,
There's an R missing. Okay.
is actually is
Is it the
temperature.
Pandas data frame?
Yeah, and I'm never sure about the exact syntax,
It's a
but
column, so I think you can do direct number indices. And
and
starting
it
from
starts with
0 is
0. Yeah.
fine. I mean, you don't have to explicitly write a 0, but then again, why not?
Let's see if that
Okay.
works.
Um, the notes are also suggesting a command line interface. Should we first think about
Looks
the
correct.
functions a bit more? Look at side effects.
So, okay, let's have a look. Personally, I said I would wonder whether we can return the plot data. So
Yeah,
something
makes
like
sense. Instead of
and
clearing.
have a um
So if you are constructing a new plot, you might as well clear it when you start, right?
yeah, and then leave it open. That's true. Yeah. At which point we could also, in theory, do a this is plt, and then plt.show to get our visuals back in, for example, a Jupyter notebook.
Yep.
If you want to put this back into a Jupyter notebook.
Yeah,
So
so we can call
this is
import this file and
this
call
function
all
is
these
then
functions.
usable both as a function in a program and in a Jupyter notebook where we want to in the end present this.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, did you try running it though? Does it actually work?
Not yet, but this seems to be
Yeah,
correct.
yeah, it works. Good.
I didn't test it with the plt.show yet. Let's see. So yeah, I'm getting the plots. I need to now close them again so that it finishes, but I'm getting the plots.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, we don't need the plot.show
So
now. I
so
mean, if you prefer to keep it, then why not?
so in this script, no, we don't need them.
Yeah,
If we want to put this, we could
in a
actually
notebook. Yeah.
go back to our notebook. So what is it that we currently need to do? We essentially have this is what we are currently doing.
Yeah, this is nice to show. I mean, basically, so what we're showing here is how you import your own code into the notebook and then run it. Import some
No,
functions from a
no, it
library.
wasn't weather prediction. It was weather. What was the name? No, it was weather predictions. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, importing from the back from the file and there's an extra ict into predictions. ICF
Predictions
predictions. Yeah. Okay. So now we have read data
and
and plot
plots
data.
data.
Okay. So that makes sense. Yeah, and there we are.
And now our script, our Jupyter script essentially says, okay, we are reading data and then we are going over different measurements. There is barely any functional code here anymore.
Yeah.
So
So what do you think about the mean calculation? It is like if we were calculating more complicated
so,
statistics, it should become its own function.
yep.
But
I,
it is not a super complicated thing here, is it?
so to me, here's a bit of the point. For this mean, I probably wouldn't create a function.
Yeah.
But for the purpose of this, I would probably create something that does build some statistics, and I would probably because it's not that likely that it's just the mean that you normally need instead for statistics. So
If we
yes,
just
having
want to mean, so there's a very good point in the notes again. Like writing your own mean function is also a bit like
stupid.
yeah. It's like if you want the standard mean, I mean, yeah, the mean, the average. There's multiple different averages that we could use. So in that sense, having a function where you can go and change which average you want might make sense. But we could also use numpy.mean, and or actually it is a pandas column. So you can call just temperatures.mean. I think it would work. I think there's a mean function just directly embedded in the pandas column class. So in any case, I mean,
See,
whatever language you're using, almost certainly it already has a mean function in it or
that
some
looks pretty
statistical
much like it.
framework.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
we don't actually have to write our own mean function for this one, although it again, it would also be a good example. Like it's one of the things that you might want to do, but well, we
um,
already wrote two functions, so
so there's actually a different question that I would we're kind of asking here.
Mm.
Is the mean actually an input to the plot function or not? Because the mean here is just used to create a plot line at the mean level. So, and is something that is a derivative from temperatures. So we
And
don't
you
need
could
this as an
move,
input.
yeah, you could move that calculation into, yeah,
And I
temperatures of
think
mean.
this is,
I don't know, what do people think? Is this better? I think it makes sense this way. It also makes sense depending on what you're doing. It might make sense
yeah,
to have um, a line argument or X line, or is it a Y line, whichever it is, um, in the plot data that allows you to just define where the line goes. And then it doesn't have to be a mean necessarily. It could be whatever line you want.
uh,
Um, but yeah,
going a
this
bit
way,
into going a bit over the top of how this could be designed. Conceptually, temperatures could be a class or something.
yeah,
We could have a temperature object class where you can set what kind of things you want to have, like what kind of average value you want to use. And then you would essentially say temperatures.average and temperatures.values instead of these
okay.
two, and then have it dependent
People,
on the temperature.
yeah. So people want to get to the command line. One more thing before we go there. What do you think of the comments? Oh, actually, two more things. One, what's the error message that you get when you run this? Um,
Hmm?
and how do you figure out where the error is?
M-
Can you run it?
Wait,
Um, okay, so how do
ah,
we figure out what the error message is? This is not the error I was expecting. I was expecting a different one.
maybe there is a different one. So I removed the means here, so
So yeah,
um, I
so
need
in
to remove
the
that here.
yeah. So I guess my main point is there's no reason to be scared of errors. They just tell you the line that you need to change, usually, in almost any language. In some languages, though, you need to fiddle around, like compile it differently to get the line numbers. But still, it's always
Did you mean that
useful to
error?
get errors. Yes, I meant this one. So that's on line 11. Okay, yeah, now
And this is something that a good IDE would actually flag
yeah, yeah, it would.
during the development, that this is not existent, so this can't work.
Yeah. So two things we want to do, or at least two things: command line interface and tests. Which do we do first?
Um,
So we have command line interface twice in the notes
yep, then let's go for
and
command line
tests
interface.
once. So let's go with that. And what's your favorite? I think I have started using click more and more because I've learned it from CodeRefinery, and it's
Uh,
convenient.
I'm generally fine with whatever. I haven't personally used click that much, but
Okay.
you can, in the worst case, go send me
Yeah, I
through
can go.
the
I mean,
yeah.
this is again something that like different languages have their different implementations of how to do command line arguments. So we'll do it again in Python. The example is in Python. But yeah, you can search the web for command line interface and the language that you're using, and there will almost certainly be a very good library for doing them in a simple way. Okay, so to do this, we want to, for click, yeah, you need a main function. Um, and then you need to
Actually,
define how you give those arguments in the command line.
we don't have an out file at the moment,
No,
so
we don't. True.
our out file is currently fixed. We can change that later, maybe. So and if I see that right, then we have a definition that this is so this is kind of an annotation to the main
Okay.
function. Uh, that, yeah, this is a command.
Yeah. So now this main function is something you can run from the command line, and then you add options. So options are the command line arguments. And they also must have the same name as, oh, well, I mean, the easiest thing to do is to give them the same name as the parameters of the main function. So you can
Uh,
give type equals
Actually,
int.
looking at this is not the same name. This has a
No,
minus.
it's in fact, yes, this is, well, that's a peculiarity of Python.
Yeah.
Maybe a good number of other languages have the same issue. So
It,
you cannot have a minus sign inside the name, right? It would be num minus measurements. It would be a math calculation, not a name. So it has to be an underscore. But click will automatically convert the minus sign into an underscore here.
is it is the order relevant or is it really
The order
name
should be the
matching?
same as in the
And
options
then
as
it's
well,
just the
I
order
think. Well, no,
that it's
I think
using.
I've tried. We can try. If you change the
Uh,
name, I think it will
we'll
not
see.
work. We can also try changing the order. And well, if we have time.
So these are the two values that we have, and then we essentially have our functionality here, and we need to. Oh no, we have the out file. Ah, we have an out file. Forget. Yeah, of course we have an out file.
Well, yeah, if we are plotting one particular number of
No, we have an out
measurements.
file. Yeah, but we can simply replace this by the out file.
Yeah, yeah.
So we have an out file. Modular. The
But now
modularity
then
helps here already.
we have one specific number of measurements and then yeah, a specific name for the
Okay,
output file. And
okay.
that means we don't have the for loop anymore. Um,
Yeah,
is
that's
it
true.
required? Um,
Nah, that's something I just wanted to ask. How do you set defaults in Click?
a good question. We don't have it in the example.
But probably since this default depends on a different input, let's just have it required.
So yeah, in this case, it it would be nice to show how you add a default value. It's just default equals something. But for the out file, yeah, you should not. We can say default equals none.
Yeah, but
So
then you
instead
don't
of
have an out
required
file number
equals.
that.
And
Ah,
then
you mean
if it's none, then you use the number of measurements. But then you also have to remove the required equals true if you
that's
have default equals none. I think at least it makes sense this way. Um, so now we check if the out file is not given. So the default value is none. That's usually easy to check and usually not what you want. So then we can use this default value. Okay, and otherwise we just use whatever value is in out file. So yeah, that should be in file.
you could also set this to false and just have another default value for
Yeah,
temperatures.csv or
yeah.
something.
Yeah, it depends
Okay.
on like how you want to use the interface. A default value for an input file can be surprising. And you
Yep.
generally want to avoid surprises. So now we have the out file. Now we don't have the for loop anymore, right?
Yes, we don't have that anymore.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, now we need the standard Python thing, if name equals underscore underscore name. If the name equals main with lots of underscores, then we call the main function. And if you don't know Python, this doesn't mean anything to you. And if you know Python, it still doesn't mean anything to you. It's just Python. Okay.
Um, if I'm recalling that correctly, it's due to forks and things. So if you have multiprocessing, main will only one of the things will be called main and therefore execute the main, and everything else
So
will not do that.
yeah, so essentially, like, if you import it as a module, then main will not execute, and we can still import it in the Jupyter code, and it will work the same way as before. But if you run it as a script, then this main section will execute. So it's something you see often. Measurements. Now, if you write something incorrectly or just don't remember what the parameters are, Click will produce a message that tells you how to run. Okay, it didn't create a 26. Yes, it did. Okay, now it's
It did. It just takes time
Yeah,
to show
okay,
up.
fine.
So yeah.
Okay, so it works. Great. Oh, one thing I was thinking a while ago. What do you think about the comments in this main function? Read the data
Well,
from a file. I mean,
this
okay,
is
one is in the wrong
definitely the
place.
wrong place.
Yeah. But read data, the function name read data it tells you exactly the same thing as
Yes,
the comment.
you don't need
Yeah.
the comment.
Yeah.
This comment is more or self-explanatory.
And the same thing
This could
for
be
code
a select
results.
the
Yeah.
requested measurements. Could well, well, I would say for anyone who has worked with pandas a bit, it's clear what this does, but might
Yeah.
still be
Well, let's not
useful to
assume
have.
that.
But might still be useful to
But
have
yeah,
that. And that
and
plot
the
results,
plot.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
this,
So the point is the function names explain what is happening. If someone is just looking through the main function, we don't need to actually explain in comments because now, since we made the code modular and we used helpful function names, the comments are suddenly a lot less necessary. The code explains itself, right? Okay. Can you also try running this from the Jupyter notebook? So we'll should see that it still works.
you mean, where's my Jupyter notebook? You mean rerunning what we had here?
Yeah. So this is importing the two functions,
Yep,
and yeah, they
still
still work
works.
as before. So the fact that we added this command line interface doesn't actually change anything in the
Actually,
code.
let's restart this because we have an
Oh,
import
true.
here and ah.
Yeah, well, actually, yes, something did change. We no longer give the mean as a parameter.
True. You see, that's why restarting was important.
Yeah, true.
But yes, general, it works. We just had a, well, small bug
Okay.
because we changed our,
Now, um,
yeah.
okay, so the next thing was to add tests.
No, the next thing I
Um,
think would be to have this input part. I hope that click does something with this.
yeah, yeah, it works.
So yeah, this is what click provides you essentially. All this additional information, and that you essentially have a command line interface where you can get with standard parameters like help, some information about okay, well, how does this work, and so on.
Yeah.
Actually, uh,
Mm, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, we're just telling what the default value actually is.
If you don't provide a default, I think it's a good idea to help to give these kind of information.
Oh, and yes, it is in fact time for a break. We have been going on for an hour, and yeah, since we are not following a schedule, I'm not keeping an eye on it. It is definitely already like I should have started the break a while ago, I guess. But we can take the break now for 10 minutes and be back at 14:10.
And then do the tests after that.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, let's take a break, walk around a little bit, and see you then. Bye.
See you later. And hi again. So we wanted to get into testing.
Yeah. So where would you put the tests?
I personally would create a tests folder.
So it's not a huge project. We only have one Python file,
but let's assume it might become bigger at some point.
And even then, even if you have just a single Python file, I would at least create a separate file for the tests. But that's just like, I guess we are dealing with relatively big projects every single time. Well, in any case, it does not hurt. So we can create a test folder, and then there is a test weather
predictions.
Test underscore something file there, test weather predictions file there. Okay. And it's empty. So
there's nothing there at the moment.
Do we test? We have two functions in our package.
Was it read data and
plot data? Okay. So these are both a little bit more complicated than they're not just returning. They're not taking input values and returning values. Well, read data is, but it is doing something else. It's reading from disk. And the other one is creating a file to disk. So we can still test this, and it might actually be like quite useful to show that it's not that complicated. So why don't we do that? So okay, now there's a data folder.
Because we want to essentially have our test data as data for the tests.
Yeah. So we create, and this could be essentially anything formatted like the data we are reading. But in this case, we have an example file already, so why not use that? So yeah, we've copied the file that contains the temperatures.csv into this data folder. And now we can make a test read data function. So it for pytest specifically, the folder name should be tests. The file, the module that contains the test should be test underscore something. And then the function also needs to be test underscore something. But this depends on the framework. But yeah, so that is why the structure that we have here exists. Okay, so test read data. So what do? We call the read data function. I don't think we need really any preamble. We can just call it, give it the file name. And I guess it's in, is the path relative? It's always relative to where it's called from.
Yep, right? And we will call it from the main, so.
Yeah, so it's test/data/temperatures.csv. Okay, and now we can check some values.
Yeah, where was it?
So it's the green, yeah.
The values that we had. So let's.
We only take the air temperature column. That's the only column we have. So we can take number 8. Number 8 will actually be because
number 7.
Python starts indexing from 0, so it's the index 7. Yeah, we do an asset. So one thing is you can write a test function. You can write a test function that doesn't have any asserts, and then the test will fail only if there's an error. But that can happen. But yeah, so we are checking that the data is also read correctly.
16.
So in a lot of cases, you won't be able to have exactly the same data in your tests because you don't want to push them to a public repository if you're publishing your code. But then you can create just like randomly type numbers by hand into the file, and that's fine. You can probably use a different text editor than JupyterLab to open the CSV file and type some numbers in.
And I'm putting the approx here also for the -4 because the problem might be that this line is read as a floating number, and we might
Yeah.
get something that
Yeah,
is
in
not
fact, it will
exactly
be.
4. Most likely it is exactly 4 or -4, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess one of these things where it might be useful to show that there's an error, but then again, it's also that it's specifically Pandas that's reading it as floating point. It might not happen with a different library or different language and so on. So
So
yeah, let's just do it like this. This looks good, looks correct. Does the read data take any other parameters?
yes, it takes a column. So we could just
Oh, you can try a
use
different column name, like time. No, well, okay.
time
Time is
might be
probably not
difficult.
yeah, I
The problem
mean,
is everything else
it's
is exactly the same all the time. So no, wait, the D is not the same.
okay. It's day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, temperatures. Let's
so you
say
have to scroll down a good bit to say to get a different
0
day.
is 1 and temperatures 62 is 3.
Yeah, these will probably be integers, but well, you can still have the
Yeah,
approx. It doesn't hurt.
doesn't really hurt here.
No.
Okay, so let's
Try running the test. So now we run pytest. It found the test, which is nice. It also
yeah, and
noticed that we do not actually have this module in the so yeah, I guess this is a bit too Python specific. It's
yeah, this is very Python specific.
we just have to add a dot in front, right? Or is
That
that relative to the test folder?
let's see. I'm never entirely sure. No, this is
Yeah.
um. I
What's
hate
the
it.
right way around this? This is the annoying thing with it. I mean, the right way around this would be to turn the whole thing into a package.
Yep, which I'm just doing.
Oh, okay.
This is a bit hacky now, but there's not really goes like this, if I'm
Yeah,
not
I mean, the
completely
thing that makes it a
mistaken.
package is that there is an init file. Is that
Do I need an init?
I think you do in the app folder. Uh, it's .txt. So there is an extra, yeah, yeah, okay.
No,
Nope, it
no
didn't find
module
it.
named app. Or
Okay, I think so. If you don't
okay, this
install the package, then you have to either
but
have
this
it in the same folder as the test, or it needs to be
this works
a
on different things. I know that I'm doing exactly this on other projects.
let's see if anybody is no comments in the notes. So yeah, I mean, this is one of these things where I'm often get confused about what's happening.
Okay, then in this case,
But if we move the test file into the main folder, and we also move the
uh,
main file back into the main folder.
No, let's do something that I personally don't really like too much, but in this case, I think we'll just do this.
Well, I mean, you don't have to put it in the same file. As long as they are in the same folder, it should work.
Okay, let's see. Actually cut, because we don't want to have this twice.
So one common solution also is to add is to add the path where your main code is, to add it to the Python path where it looks for packages. Okay, now it actually ran. PyTest is not defined.
Oh yes, of course.
That's fun.
No, it's not fun because we didn't import it here.
Oh, right, it's this
Wait,
pytest.approx. Okay, nice.
which we. Okay.
Okay, now it passed. Right. Um,
Good. So this
yeah,
is
that's
the
nice.
test for
Should
our read
we?
data.
So
And
I guess we still have our test data in the tests folder. So we can do, we can do we can
let's
do plot
assume that the
data.
25 here is correct.
Yeah.
So let's have plot data. We
So this shouldn't take too long, but we also don't have too long, so we can take a couple of minutes to do this and then wrap up.
plot data. What is it?
So
Not like this.
yeah, you give it
And the
give
output
it some
file.
temperatures, and then the
So
output file name.
this now gets a little bit more complicated because we have the problem that we need a temporary folder here because we need to write to a file for a test that should be a temporary file. But
Yep.
Python has a package called temp file, which I will use for this purpose.
And this is again something that almost any language will have.
Yeah.
So this
And
gives you a temporary file name that but you can create the file safely and you will not be overwriting anything. Where that file exactly is will depend on the operating system.
I don't need anything here. And now I need actually. Is it file.name? Um,
Hmm. So let's look quickly. So you create a temporary file. With temp file.temporary file.
yeah, it's .name. Okay.
And yeah, okay, you found it first. Good.
That should work. And then file.name.
Yep.
And now we need to compare this with the file that we have.
So do you have a
Which
standard solution? There is
not
the file
really.
compare file CMP.
Yeah, file CMP might make.
Yeah. I assume that almost any language has a file comparison
One way or
function,
another, worst
library.
case, you need to compare these with
Yeah,
yeah,
so it's file compare file CMP dot CMP,
.cmp.
file name 1, file name 2.
Um,
And I think we can do shallow equals true, or well, it's not gonna take that long anyway.
uh, yes. /25.png.
Okay.
And then just an assert here. Yeah. Oops, that's one too many. Let's see if this works.
It will not work because they have a different modified time.
Ah, can I ignore that?
So this is not the contents of the file that is the, comparing.
Mm,
Sorry, this is should we read in the data and read in some bytes from the data and compare that, or just I don't want to feel to leave it at this point, but
well,
but we have very limited time.
okay, then maybe.
We can do file one, so open both with open file name one as file one, or this is the as test file is the file we wrote, not in parentheses. This is a variable name.
Or
New
test output.
And then with or test output, okay, with yeah, this file name as correct output. Test correct, okay. Okay. So now it's opened both files, and then you go if test output.read, and that's a function, parentheses.
No.
Test underscore output.
Yeah.
Sorry. And also if doesn't have parentheses, it has a space.
Yes, I'm working in TypeScript and JavaScript too much.
Yeah. No, well, not. I mean, this is a peculiarity of Python again. So if it's equal to, well,
isn't it?
Correct output does read. You can do assert, yeah. Okay, that should work. It's actually comparing the entire contents of the files, which
is a bit over the top, but okay.
Yes, int object doesn't have an attribute, right? So what are we doing? So this is in line 18. Let's look at line 18. We can figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Plot data, file name. What does our plot data? Plot data takes temperatures and takes file name. Int attribute doesn't. What?
Oh, it's line 12 in plot data. Maybe we
Oh no. Okay, no. This is incorrect. I think what we need here is this.
okay.
I think this is what we need, and
debugging
we
the
need.
test is always the the fun part, right? It happens very often. Okay.
Because the thing is, the file name just gave the integer the location of the file.
Okay.
This is a bit.
Yeah, I remember seeing stuff like that with temp file.
I'm not sure if this. No. Okay, no.
Wait. Temp file.name temporary file as something, and then it has a something.name. It's actually a file handler already. A file handler already. You can do temp. But well, I mean, this should work, I think.
Yeah, I just need to say that. Because I'm not sure.
They need to be, so this line needs to be indented to the same level as the
Are
previous
you
one.
sure? Because I'm
No,
opening the
because
same file
otherwise
again.
temp file is
Yes,
not.
that's why I just created an additional
Okay, let's.
variable.
You don't have to open it. We are running out of time. Sorry. But you don't have to open it. You can use the so this named temporary file gives you a file handle. So it is already open in that URI.
Okay,
But then
but
you don't have
we
to open it again. You can, if you go to the, so you can, instead of using the test output, you can use temp file directly. So if you remove line 10 to 21.
sorry, got a slightly different idea.
Okay.
The thing is, I want this to be closed again because I have the impression we are getting a problem that we have an open file and we are not closing it properly afterwards.
Yeah.
That was
But
my
then you
idea, but
have to take the name into a different variable.
yes, that's what I just did.
Oh, okay.
But we do get an issue. Okay.
Right. So this is on line 23.
That's an assert issue.
Yeah. So I wanted to show that this is not as complicated as it seems, but comparing the files directly seems to
Is
be more complicated than we might
might even
assume.
be.
And I think we need to move on
Cut it
to
at
the.
this. Yeah.
Um,
But conceptually, you would take the files and compare them in some
yeah.
way to
So
see
yeah,
that
read
they
the
are the same.
files and look at the contents. We can also just check that the file is there.
I assume it would take us another 10 to 15 minutes to get the
Yeah.
to get this right now, and I don't think it's actually worth it at the moment.
Yeah. And it's an image file, which is generally the one of the easier things to check by looking at it. So if it was any different kind of a file, what you would do is open the file, read the contents, and then compare to a known example,
Yeah.
which is what we're trying to do here. So hopefully we didn't get too bogged down and lose the general context. So the overall idea is to, well, test what the function does, and in this case, it's writing to the file system. So to test that, you read the file and you compare it to what you already know it should be. And the main thing is here, we use known test data. So we already know what should happen because we know what this temperatures.csv contains.
Yep.
And then if you were to put this online, this code, publish it, you would publish the known test data as well. And then everybody can run the tests. So now we could probably find a clever way of looking at the contents of the image a little bit and compare the files directly. But it's probably not worth doing today. So, or well, not
But I
right
think
this second.
the concept
So,
hopefully got clear. And this is mainly
yeah,
about the concept here.
yeah. So one other thing to mention is that we still have everything, both the functions defined in the script and everything. It works well enough. One thing we could have done, especially if it was a bigger package, is to take the script and put it in a separate file and then have things that are imported in a different file.
Yeah.
That would also be nice. Then it would be a module you can very easily move around. But okay, let's leave it at that. There is the feedback for day 6 available, and we still have a workshop outro in the schedule. So Richard and Samantha, welcome. Sorry for taking your time with the debugging the test.
No worries. This is good to show. Like this is also showing like this is sometimes what you have to do. This is sometimes what you have to think about. And I
Yeah.
think it's nice to like watch you two figure it out because that may also like stick better. Like next time, maybe some of the participants are in the same situation, and then maybe they remember, oh yeah, there was this one thing that Jarno did, or this one thing that Thomas suggested. Maybe.
So
Oh,
so
Kat
what
is
you're
also
saying
with
is
us. Great.
stuff not working is the most useful part of the lesson.
No, but it's a good thing, I think, to have
No,
it
I mean
also part
it's
of the lesson. If
no, I
everything
mean
would work, that's not real.
no, I mean by most useful, I mean actually most useful to see how stuff goes wrong. Now that was feedback from other stuff before.
Yeah, and
Let's
it's part
see.
of the process, so don't worry.